website. And my website, once again, is thehittingstopshere.com. And I want to just tell you a quick little story. The name of this booklet is Plain Talk About Spanking. It was written by Jordan Ryak. It'll take you about 20 to 30 minutes to read this. This little booklet is the most compassionately written and thoroughly explored book on why spanking, or how spanking affects your child and your relationship with your child. As a matter of fact, I had spoken to a woman who had come to me after I had done a talk at another place, and she had mentioned to me that she was actually considering a divorce from her husband. And it was because of the way in which he handles their son. He's 5 years old, and he's really rough with his son. And I told her, I said, listen, I'm going to give you a booklet, and I want you to have your husband read this booklet. I said, and when he reads it, then you see what you're going to do, you'll do after. Because he might read this and things might change. Well, she came back to me a couple weeks later, and she said, Paula, thank you so much for that book. She said, it has really changed. My husband really gets it. He and my son are getting along well. They're trying to mend the relationship, or he's trying to mend his relationship with his son. And my little boy came to me and said, Mommy, who's the lady that made Daddy be nice to me? And it was just from his reading this booklet that it changed his entire relationship with his little 5-year-old. So I know some of you had a few questions, so I'm going to open it up for a few questions here. And yes, young lady in the back.
Yes, Paula, are there any special classes teachers are taking where they're taught how to hit children?
Okay, that is a very good question. One thing that we have done with my campaign and a few other campaigns, or other organizations that are looking into protecting children, we have sought through a lot of different schools to see if teachers are actually trained for paddling, that they actually learn the so-called proper way to paddle. There is not one school in this entire country that has a curriculum for teaching educators how to paddle. So it's all out there. They do it the way they do it. And also, there's not even a standard for the type of paddle. So some schools may use a really heavy paddle. Some may use a small paddle. I spoke to a woman who said her teacher used a baseball bat. He took a baseball bat and he shaved it down the center, or I should say cut it in half, where he had the flat piece, and he used that to paddle the kids. It was an actual baseball bat. So there are no standards for the size, the weight, the thickness, how big it is. And kids are out there at the mercy of the teachers on how they're going to spank. There's no education on it. Yes, ma'am.
So if the teacher gets upset with the children, they can just express their emotional being upset with the kids by violently striking them?
Basically, yes. The question was, that means can a teacher, when she's upset with the kid, she just pretty much, depending on her emotional state, can hit that child to the degree that she wants to? And yes, that is correct.
Wow.
Yes. Yes, do you have a question?
Are there any tests done to assure that teachers don't have mental disorder or any other issues?
That's a very good question. Our question is, are teachers tested to find out whether they have a mental disorder before they're allowed to paddle children? Actually, that's a good question. I haven't researched that particularly, but because of the types of bruises and injuries and cases where children are abused, I mean criminally abused, my guess is that there is not. Teachers are fingerprinted. All teachers are fingerprinted. But what's going on with their own personal agenda or their own personal lives can sometimes come through in their paddling. There may be some neurosis or psychosis or just hidden anger or issues. There's a litany of things that could be going on with any teacher at any moment. You know, she had a bad night the night before, an argument with her husband. Her son came in and was in trouble, or they can't pay their bills, or there's something going on. And those things alone, you don't have to be neurotic or have some kind of clinical evaluation for you to go overboard when you are physically disciplining a child. That's a very good question. Any other? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, are children who are spanked more likely to be physical or violent or from other kids?
Okay. Her question is, are kids who are hit more likely to hit other children or be violent towards kids? Yes, that is correct. First of all, we all know that children are little sponges. They imitate everything. It's why some people are at least, are very careful about what they put in front of their kids. Because what kids look at on television or in relationships with their parents or friends, they will imitate. So if I get angry and I say, stop doing that, and that kid gets angry at another friend because he did something, it's very likely he's going to say, stop doing that. Because he learned it from me. Now, if I talk to him and say, that really hurts my feelings, or I'd like you to not do that, and I try to solve the problem peacefully, then when he has a problem with his child, with a little friend, he's likely to imitate that behavior and try to solve it. I mean, children learn everything from what they see, and especially from adults, and especially from teachers, because we're the role models. And we need to have a higher standard for what we teach children, because that is exactly what they're going to imitate. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Miss Paula, do teachers sometimes spank the wrong child?
Okay, do teachers sometimes spank the wrong child? You know something, that is very, very likely. I haven't personally done a survey, but just like there were people in prison who are the wrong convicted individuals, maybe they didn't do the crime, but we all know there are people in jail who are innocent. So it's not unlikely that there were children who were paddled, who were innocent, or who were paddled for something that another kid did, and that kid wasn't paddled. Okay? So sometimes there is favoritism, or there's all different things that go involved. I mean, it is very clear and obvious, mostly black boys are paddled. The statistics are out there. You're going to have a black, especially a dark-skinned black kid, paddle far more than a little blonde white girl who might have done the same thing. That's just out there. Okay, and that's just out there. Okay, so yes, I'm sure there were many children who either paddled and they were not at fault. Maybe a child said this kid did such and such, and they were paddled, or they did something that really didn't require a paddling or call for a paddling, but because of who that kid was to the teacher or in that classroom setting, he got the paddle. That happens. Let's face it. That's just true. Okay. And the other question, young lady?
Yes, Paula. Do teachers use a different level of force for different violations?
Okay. Her question is, do teachers use a different level of force? And I would say that's very likely. I mean, I'm a parent. I did spank my daughter. When she was a little girl, I spanked her with my hand. I didn't beat her up and cause any bruises or anything. But there were times, I'm sure, when I was frustrated, I probably hit her a little bit more firmly than other times. Now, knowing what I know now, I wish I'd never spanked her at all. Okay, but I'm sure that if there were some measured thing on my hand that measured how hard I hit her when I was more frustrated than other times, I would say I'm sure I did hit her a little more firmly than other times. And absolutely, when a kid does something, if the teacher has something about using swear words, and a kid uses a swear word, that teacher might hit that kid harder because that's their own personal, thing that they don't like. Where another teacher's cursing might not matter as much as stealing. So maybe this kid stole somebody's lunch, and that teacher has a big thing about stealing. And so maybe that teacher hits harder because you stole, but this teacher doesn't hit as hard because you cussed, but you're going to get hit. I mean, we're people, and we have our own judgments. Okay, so yes, I would say it's very likely that they do use a different level of force. And so yeah, extreme, excessive force is used, and depending on where that teacher is. Anybody else have any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Ms. Paula. Are children who are spanked more manually or more
Like more disciplined?
Yeah, more disciplined.
Okay, all right, so that's a good question. She said, children who are spanked, do they turn out to be more manually or more disciplined? Now, I want you to think about two things. First of all, you can get results from kids, immediate results. If you're going to paddle them and they know that they're going to get paddled, a lot of times kids will behave because they know, if I don't, I see that paddle there, I better behave. Now, how many of you want your children to learn to behave out of fear?